So, P&O Ferries are a ferry company from the south of the UK, which is owned by globally by the Dubai Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is essentially ultimately the Dubai royal family overall. And they were running, they run kind of the ferries between Dover and Calais and things like that, and a bunch of ferry routes from the UK and outwards. Now, obviously, during the pandemic, they lost a bit of money because they were not really engaging in any actual business at that point because people weren't being able to actually travel that much. But they were given furlough bailout money by the government, so they could still pay their employees whilst things were not functioning as the pandemic went on. Pandemic's finished now. They can actually start trading again. So they're looking at being able to actually look into running these routes more often nowadays. Now that all of the restrictions are being lifted, and how have they responded to this? They fired 800 personnel overnight with no warning, with no notice period, nothing like that. They sent out a message on Teams with a little video saying, "Tomorrow, don't come into work. You've all lost your jobs," which is crazy. You just think like, that doesn't really usually happen that often nowadays, but it's happened in this case. Are they firing them because they want to be able to reduce their overall workforce in total? No. They are firing them to replace them with cheaper agency workers rather than long-time workers who, have built up time with that company, built up, a relationship with them, built up, a pension pot with them as well, all that kind of stuff. No, none of that matters anymore. They're just being fired and replaced with cheaper agency workers to be able to, benefit the cost of they are very wealthy Dubai royal family owners. But I digress. Transport unions are expressing concern about safety and urging P&O Ferry staff to continue protesting after companies sacked 800 personnel and replaced them with cheaper agency workers. This is a purpose called fire and rehire. It is a awful policy, which is legal in the United Kingdom. There are people who are in the European Union, countries in the European Union, who are protected from these kind of predatory anti-worker business practices. We don't get that anymore in a post-Brexit world. But the only reason why we don't get this in the post-Brexit world is because the Tory government will do nothing to combat that. Being in the EU isn't necessarily something that we would have to do to have these laws in place. We could just have a government that actually cared about working people. But of course, we don't, and that's why they campaign for Brexit. So they continue to be able to loosen, some level of company regulation to protect the working class. That's good in general, right? So we don't have any of those firing high laws. They're free as much as they want to be able to do that and then replace them with cheaper workers. Like British Gas tried to do that. A bunch of other places have tried to do this. It's become a really big thing in that. To be able to maximise shareholder profits, they've been having to compromise on their payouts to the workers at the bottom of the pile, which, again, that's just the function of capitalism in a nutshell, really, in that shareholder profits always have to come first against, the people on the bottom end on the actual bottom of the pile. But nevertheless, I digress. Trade union Northwest International, which represents some of those dismissed, said new crews would be unfamiliar with the vessels and routes. The Rail, Maritime and Transport Union is calling for demonstrations in Dover, Liverpool and Hull today. And the minister told Sky News there's little the government can do because it cannot force an employer to continue to employ people. I mean, you could put in a law that stops fire and rehire. You could do that. Other countries have done that. Ferry operator cancelled its services as they try to change things over. Nautilus International has claimed on the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency to make sure ships are safe. It's an intensely worrying situation because sailing vessels across the channel is like walking across a 6-lane motorway at rush hour. There are serious safety concerns. We've written to the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency and hope and pray they will do their job. Armed Forces Minister James Heappey of the Conservative Party said P&O's decision was disgraceful and the government was not given much more notice than the sacked employees themselves, which again is very bad. Yes, exactly. Almost certainly lead to unsafe practices. You're very, very true. So that is the case that the government cannot force an employer to continue to employ people the employer has said it doesn't want to employ. Again, you can, you just don't want to. Let's just frame this correctly, James. This isn't a case of you not doing what it's not being possible. Is that your government does not want to do so. You feel like it is bad because it would affect the bottom line of the people who pay your bills, right, at the end of the day. That's what a Conservative government exists to do. Now, let's be real. The Conservatives were never going to do that. But again, that's why they, like I said before in the segment, they pushed so hard specifically for Brexit so that they could maximise the ability with which that they could remove all of the red tape and all that kind of stuff that would essentially stop employers doing this in the first place. Which again, we would have these protections when we stay in the EU, but I digress. We could have these protections if we wanted to, but the government doesn't want to. So again, it will fall on the people who own P&O Ferries and the government. These are the two people who are mostly to blame, right? It's an absolutely horrendous way for them to treat all their staff, and I know there's anger amongst ministerial colleagues. They are seeing what they can do to make the situation better, but the reality is P&O made a commercial decision, and as such, so we disagree with it. I feel that those workers, they've been badly let down by their employer. It's just hand-wringing. There's no level to which this can be mitigated. It's just, oh well, boo-hoo, isn't it? It's sad. I'm really sad about how these workers all lost their jobs, but it's not like I'm in, the government that's in power, the most powerful institution in the country, which could be able to regulate this. Unfortunately, it's just out of our hands at this point. And he's unsure whether the government would be able to get back the 10 million from P&O, which it paid to its staff in furlough money. Brilliant. The RMT described the move as an appalling situation and a vicious example of despotic employer behaviour. True. The union's General Secretary Mick Lynch said it was a kick in the teeth of the hard-working members of staff who have kept the business running through the global health crisis. He also claimed the union received reports of security guards at Dover boarding ships to remove crew members with handcuffs. Which I think is good, that the protest they're engaging in is just not refusing to leave the cruise ships. I think that's pretty based. In a statement, P&O Ferries said we made a $100 million loss year on year, which has been covered by our parent DP World. This is not sustainable. The company insisted the decision to cut jobs was very difficult but necessary to plug its losses. But, you made a $100 million loss during the pandemic. The pandemic's over now. It's a completely different situation. I'm glad that, the Dubai royal family has deigned to bless the employees that have kept the company going with not making them redundant before, but has been not starting making them redundant now that starting making money again. I don't even know why. Whatever. This move is believed to affect everyone from captains to check-in staff to engine room staff, loaders, and cleaners. The company said those staff will be served in enhanced severance packages, calling the move necessary to protect its remaining 2,200 employees. But how many? But then why are you hiring agency work? Either you're lowering the amount of work that you have to actually do, and therefore you just want to be able to reduce your employee headcount, and one of those jobs need to be removed to be able to continue functioning. But that's not the case. You just want to save money by screwing over people in to be able to hire people, essentially scabs, to work for lower wages. That's all it is. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said its officials will be having urgent discussions about the sailings. Peter Aylett, director of the UK Chamber of Shipping, which represents the industry. Oh, okay, brilliant. So Chamber of Commerce, fucking bad ends. So P&O Ferries had no option but to do something. He told the company was valued effective in 2019 at £350 million. It's been £100 million through the pandemic, caused by an event that obviously had no control of. Clearly something had to be done, but they're making money again. Like they even said in their original statement that those losses had been absorbed by their parent company. So considering that the pandemic is now over, and so those losses are no longer things that are going to happen now that people are going to start travelling on the ferries again. Especially now we're coming up to the spring, summertime, where those revenues would be more likely to be coming in. Why would they need to make those cuts, considering those people were paid by furlough over the 2 years of the pandemic, right? I guess that's why the sackings are coming now specifically. Now they can't just sponge off the government to pay those wages anymore. I can't possibly comment on the conduct of what was done. I mean, you can just say that it's bad because everyone knows that it's bad and appreciates that it's bad. I'm sure that, the difference in price that they'd have to pay out per year in salaries to those 800 people different to the agency workers. I'm sure that saved them enough money to prevent liquidation. I'm sure that's exactly what's happened rather than just, corporate greed. Like, for example, where was it fucking Howard Beckett was pointing out? Yeah, and they paid out shareholder dividends to the tune of £270 million, right? And also, the actual billionaire owners were already splashing out 147 million on a golf contest prize, despite missing all that money in pensions to be paid out to their employees as well. So if this isn't just like an incredibly clear-cut case of corporate greed, I don't know what it is. And they paid out the CEO of P&O Cruises 22.3 million in 2018. I wonder if maybe all of these massive bonuses that are getting paid out to individuals at the top of the food chain then has a further impact further down the line when it comes to people on the bottom rung who always have to take the fall at the end of the day. It has to be their people. It has to be the working class who end up having to bear the brunt of these changes rather than the people at the top who don't want to have to, I'm going to have to buy one fewer helicopter this year. Oh no, I'm so sad for you. Absolute nonsense. Travels should make alternative arrangements, but it's absolutely correct. Just it is what it is at the end of the day. The shareholder profits will always come before workers. The needs of those shareholders will always come before workers. And scabs should be less scabby. Should stop doing that. I am finding it very amusing that the supposedly incredibly liberal and publicly minded Romaniacs now using this as an excuse to bash RMT for supporting Brexit. And I'm like, I mean, they had their own point of view, which I disagree with, but why they're attacking the union because they're so fucking brain poisoned by how much they hate Brexit. Yeah, that's the same one, also. You're absolutely correct. That they're so mind poisoned by their obsession with Brexit as an issue that they now don't want to blame the government that caused Brexit, that is also the one who refuses to implement anti-fire and rehire laws, who are now attacking the union because of their support for Brexit for a completely different reason, when they should be supporting the working people and the union that represents them. But instead, all they care about is just having the right position and being proved correct about Brexit. That they're now just suddenly, the interest of working people, just go straight out the window, just cast aside while they make their point about Brexit, which obviously is stupid. I'm not saying Brexit was a good thing to do, and then I'm not saying the RMT should have necessarily campaigned for Brexit as an issue. Right? I think that's bad. It led to bad outcomes. But the fact that the Romaniacs are so intent on the "you're wrong, we were right, ha ha, we win" angle, rather than isn't this really bad how a big company is sacking 800 workers and then scabbing them with agency workers. The fact that that's the thing they focus on really just to shed a light on the Romaniac liberal brain. That they just can't focus on anything else at this point, and that generally the interests of working people are just things that they use as a vector with which to push their viewpoints, rather than something that they genuinely care about for its own merits, which is it is what it is at the end of the day. It's what it is. But yeah, and it's just frustrating that when you see the deputy leader of the Labour Party, someone who I'm not as aggressive towards Angela Rayner as a lot of other leftoids are. I think she gets a bad rap for what she says and does, and I don't really think that she deserves a lot of the ire that the online left give her, which we're probably more rightly directed at Keith Starmer, as far as I'm concerned. But it is incredibly depressing with her saying, just gently say to P&O bosses that you'll vote with your feet and go elsewhere. It's like, no, this is why the Labour Party should exist and say that this is bad because it is bad and there should be laws stopping it, rather than saying that just let the market decide. You should vote with your feet. If you decide, well, it's fine. Just let market dynamics solve this, rather than some kind of level of legislation, which I find frustrating. These tweets are just bad, and they frame the issue completely incorrectly. Labour have called on the government to review any and every contract and licence the government have with P&O or DP World, including DP World's running of 2 Freeport schemes. Obviously, Freeports are even worse. It's going to allow this level of fucking anti-worker profiteering to continue with no regulation whatsoever because of the way in which Freeports function. It's crazy that we're engaging in this Freeport stuff. I hate it so much. We should stop all the Freeport things, but the fact that the fact that the parent company of P&O are the people who are being given the free reign, the fucking the royal family of Dubai's sovereign wealth fund are being given free reign to just use British workers essentially without any protections whatsoever when these free ports come to pass. Oh, it just drives me around the fucking just drives around the fucking bed. Even Peter Oborne, who used to be a conservative, is the one in the reply saying that they should be holding the owners to account even more. And doing so, I would say, should be by not calling on the government to review contracts, calling on the government to ban fire and rehire, stop this horrendous practice. But I guess that when Labour are the ones hiring people on insecure contracts whilst also making mass redundancies, literally engaging in the same thing, who could have expected it to come from the Labour top brass, which again is very disappointing from someone who I genuinely believe is pretty good on these issues, which is Angela Rayner. So that's very sad. Angela gently whispered, paying your workers is good for profits into a jar, and then locked it away. Oh, that's so true. Yeah, throughout the history, workers have just won their hard-earned rights by just asking nicely. Hey ho. But yeah, overall, corporate greed is bad. The Labour opposition are bad. The Conservative government are bad, and Brexit is bad. Everything sucks. We need more regulation, which is again amusingly, considering the video we just watched, there should be more regulation to protect workers in these instances. Absolutely right. End fire and rehire. Go join a union. Do all that stuff. There you go. That's my prescription from this particular segment. But anyway, absolutely disgusting from P&O Ferries, and should be expected. Should be expected, considering that shareholder profit is all that matters at this point. The continual financial success of the Dubai royal family is all that matters at this point. The ability to be able to pay people, bosses at P&O Ferries, huge amounts of bonuses, that's all that matters at this point. People on the bottom will always be the one who take the fall. That's why you should join a union, why you should be a socialist. That's my prescription for this video. There you go. If you enjoyed the video, please do like, comment, subscribe, do all the algorithmic stuff, and click my name down there to then see more videos. Cheers.